Hello, everyone. This is Dean from TomorrowToday Consulting, and I just wanted to give you a quick update because in this episode, when we recorded it, we talked about J.D. Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference. But since then, we've had even more devastating meeting between Trump and Zelensky. Now, given the historic importance of this meeting, we wanted to give you a quick update because this happened after we'd done the original recording. Now, most people listening will already know what happened. But to quickly recap, Zelensky traveled to the US for a high-stakes meeting, trying to shore up support and negotiate a deal where Ukraine gives away its strategic minerals in exchange for continued US support. Trump made no commitments. He offered no reassurances. J.D. Vance hammered home the message that Ukraine cannot expect support. But here's the thing. While the grey elephants couldn't tell us how this meeting would unfold, to those of us who study the grey elephants, we were certainly not surprised. The forces of change that the grey elephants represent have been signaling for some time that this outcome was highly probable. Trump's meeting with Zelensky is a manifestation of the grey elephant stampeding through global politics. To give you some more context, in 2016, our research into grey elephants signaled Trump's election victory was incredibly probable, even when everyone was saying it would be impossible. So I wrote to Hillary Clinton, warning her that if she didn't change her strategy, a Trump victory was highly likely. You can see the link to the letter I sent to Hillary in the show notes. She never got the memo, or she ignored it. And here's the thing, you ignore grey elephants at your own peril. We made the same call early on, again for Trump's 2024 election, not because we have a crystal ball, but because the grey elephants were pointing in that direction. We saw the rising rage of angry people, the march of multipolarity, and even that aging was a force of sharp change, with the older US population increasingly supportive of Trump's narrative. Using the grey elephants, we are able to track weak signals, see where these forces of change are colliding, and this gives us early warning indicators of an approaching sharp transformation. Now, this is important because when grey elephants stampede, it's too late to prepare. You need to see them coming over the horizon in order to grab the opportunity and avoid the risk of being flattened. Now, grey elephants are telling us that Trump sees the EU as an old lady, past her prime. He believes that the future is with Russia and China, and he backs the winners. If that means throwing Europe under the bus to get what he wants, well, so be it. So what will the unimaginable but highly probable impact be for your business, for a Europe abandoned to the will of Putin? But here's another question we aren't asking. What happens when Putin doesn't respond to the way Trump wants him to? This is a signal that even Trump is missing. Because what is Putin's plan? He's playing along for now because he benefits. But what are the multipolarity grey elephants telling us? Well, it's called Primakov's Doctrine. Back in 1999, Yevgeny Primakov, then Russia's prime minister, was on his way to New York to give a speech at the UN. Mid-flight, he hears that NATO has started bombing Serbia, Russia's ally. Without hesitation, he tells the pilot to turn around and heads back to Moscow. This becomes known as Primakov's Loop, and it sets in motion a strategy designed to systematically undermine the West. It's a strategy that brings Russia closer to India and China, recognizing that alone Russia cannot compete with the US. More than that, it's a strategy, as Primakov said, to enable economic and social fortification for like-minded nationalistic and authoritarian regimes not allied to the West. That's the Primakov Doctrine. And that's the game plan Putin is playing. Now, Primakov's doctrine is common knowledge. It's just that the West has been ignoring this weak signal, while Putin, for the past 2 decades, has been diligently implementing Primakov's vision. His end goal isn't to get along with Trump. It's to dismantle the West. Trump might think he's in control, but does he really see the bigger game? Does he see the highly probable, high-impact force of change, or is he ignoring it? But as business leaders, we can't afford to be so blind. We have to consider the consequences of a scenario that not long ago seemed unthinkable, an alliance between the US and Russia, because that scenario is now highly probable. And equally, what happens when that alliance falls apart? This will be one hell of a roller coaster to navigate as a senior leader. Are you prepared? What does it mean for your supply chains, your operations, your customers, your suppliers? What does it mean for growth and profitability? At Tomorrow Today Consulting, we help leaders use the grey elephants to explore these strategic questions. Not just how to manage the risks, but how to build anti-fragile strategies that make your business stronger as a result. The grey elephant model is one of the most powerful ways to understand the sharp transformations happening in the world around us and how we can respond. If you want to learn more about how to anticipate and navigate these highly probable, high impact, but largely ignored forces of change, contact us at tomorrowtoday.consulting or check out our details in the show notes. That's it for this update. We wanted to make sure you had this briefing, given the enormity of the Trump-Zelensky meeting. And as Trump has just told the US Congress, he is just getting started. Watch out for stampeding grey elephants. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Thanks for listening to The Elephants in the Boardroom. It's a podcast full of bold conversations highlighting the mega forces that are reshaping the world and business. If you wait for the grey elephants to appear, it'll be too late to prepare.
Elephants in the Boardroom is brought to you by our friends at Achilles, who are a supply chain risk management company. Achilles support the world's biggest companies to create and maintain ethical, sustainable, and transparent supply chains.
So, welcome to the next episode of Elephants in the Boardroom. I'm Graeme Codrington in Johannesburg.
And I'm Dean Van Leeuwen, and I'm in London.
So, Elephants in the Boardroom is a podcast about the powerful forces that are shaping the world at the moment. And the shape that it's taking is a sharp transformation. This is a once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-century moment in history where it's not just technology. We're a digital-obsessed world, but there are deeper, often ignored megatrends that are driving this disruption. Sharp transformation, this era shift in history. We call them the grey elephants, and they are big challenges that none of us can afford to ignore.
So grey elephants are, well, we define them as highly probable, high impact, yet largely ignored forces of change, or actually forces of progress. Now, Elephants in the Boardroom really offers you a mega trend radar. It's for leaders who want to identify tomorrow's most important opportunities, who want to seize advantage and importantly shape a better future. So join us for powerful insights and actionable strategies to stay ahead in a rapidly transforming world.
And Dean, I suppose that's really what we're about here. Nobody can predict what's going to happen. So this isn't just a podcast about what we think might happen in the future, but it's a podcast about taking our insights, our views of these forces that are shaping the era that we're in, and giving us the opportunity to actually create our future and to build our strategy differently. And I know that's your passion. So it isn't about just predicting. I mean, none of us can predict the future, but it's about taking this view of the future and shaping our strategy, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Graeme. And people can look around and they can see the world is changing. They can see how rapidly it's changing. But our research is showing that something special is happening. You can look back over history and you can see every 100, 150 years or so, the world goes through a period of sharp transformation. And then within a decade or two, people born during those periods can't even relate to the worlds in which their parents and their grandparents were born into. The ancient Greeks had a wonderful term. They called it kairos. For them, kairos was an opportune moment, a rare opportune moment when leaders who understood, who were focused on watching these big trends unfold, really could seize opportunity to create the future. So, Graeme, as you were saying, that the best way to predict, we believe the best way to predict the future is to create it. And by understanding these grey elephants, by exploring them, evaluating what they mean against your strategies, you can really embark on incredible journeys to create the future, or most certainly create your future, and be very intentional as a leader about the future you want to create.
So in the previous episode of the podcast, we went over the radar that we're using at the moment. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back on whatever platform you're listening on now and listen to that detail. But Dean, just take us quickly through the 7 of these elephants in the boardroom that we are currently keeping our eyes on as a timestamp. It's March of 2025. We keep this radar updated regularly, but right now, sort of first quarter of 2025. Dean, quickly, what are the 7 things that are on our radar right now?
Okay, so the 7, we call them great grey elephants. There are many grey elephants out there, but these we think are the really 7 biggest ones. They are converging, they're colliding, and they're creating this sharp transformation in history. They are the rising rage. We see angry people, stressed people, rising anger of people. We see an angry planet. There's the second one, angry planet. And, it almost feels like the planet is fighting back with wildfires, droughts, extreme storms, the big squeezes. We're seeing deglobalization. We've been used to an era of abundance, and now we're starting to see some real squeezes in supply chains, in water, healthcare, inflation. Societal fractures is the next one. And what's happening here is we're seeing the rules for successful failure and institutions being eroded, fractured, and changed. Intelligent advances, incredible advanced technology. But our real question here is, who is the advances for, and who's going to benefit from them? Is it the machines, humanity? What's happening around that? Multipolarity, we're moving from a unipolar world towards a multipolar world. And the last one is aging populations. And that's the one we're going to focus on today in this podcast. And we think it's a real big issue that's facing the world at the moment.
Dean, before we dive into a little bit of detail, just to mention that we are grateful to our friends and the sponsors of this podcast, Achilles. They are a supply chain company that helps businesses to address their current and emerging supply chain challenges, and in everything up to regulatory requirements and all the way down to the nitty-gritty of making a supply chain more ethical and sustainable. So everything supply chain, everything logistics. Achilles is the company to have a look at. They obviously can help you if you are needing some assistance in that space. Avoid, the common mistakes that people make, but then go beyond that. Not just optimizing what you do, but taking into account these big structural shifts that are taking place and learning how to adapt and to build stronger business security and resilience. So thanks to Achilles again. Go and have a look at achilles.com if any of that meets a need that you have. But Dean, let's have a look at what we have seen over the last few weeks. We keep our eyes open all the time for these big shifts taking place. But obviously, in the news reports and the things happening in the world, we gather evidence that these trends are in fact shifting. So, Dean, what have you seen over the last few weeks? It's been a hell of a year so far.
Hasn't it just? Yeah, I mean, the key thing we look for are really weak signals that are suggesting that these grey elephants, or one or two of them, may be starting to stampede. And the idea is to identify the grey elephant and to keep your eye on it. So one of the trends that has really excited me and kind of pinged on my radar is Microsoft recently announced, sort of mid-February, that they have developed a new quantum computing chip, which they call the Majorana 1 chip. And that really stood out for me this month. It's a breakthrough which really makes quantum computing a reality, not in decades, but actually within years. It's the world's first quantum chip powered by topological core architecture. Maybe some of our listeners understand what that means. They're using a breakthrough material called topoconductor, and it's the first material capable of creating the foundation for stable qubits. Graeme, I know you know what a qubit is. I wonder if you want to share with the audience.
So this is an interesting one, Dean, and obviously quantum computing is the next step up for all of our lifetimes. We've had this kind of Moore's law of doubling the amount of capacity on chips that we put in our computers kind of roughly every 18 months or so. And that's pretty much continued for 50 years, giving us each new computer that is released is sort of double as powerful as the previous one. But we still come up against capacity issues. And what quantum computing does is it moves us from just using a binary system of zeros and ones to this idea of a qubit system where you can use sort of 4 to the power of 4, sort of three-dimensional computational rather than just binaries. And basically, it unlocks two things. The first is it unlocks biological computers, because you can now use DNA actually as one of your base elements for memory and computing power. But on a more solid state computer side, it jumps us several thousand times improvement in computer processing capacity. We're not there yet. Dean, anybody who follows the work that you and I do will know that we have a little bit of an ongoing debate about me being slightly more cynical of the press releases out of Silicon Valley. They've shown that these quantum computers can work, the Microsoft chip can work, but really only for things that only quantum computing can do, which in a sense is not really real world applicable yet, but super amazing and exciting to see the foundations being built for something we know is coming. Is it 5 years away? Is it 10 years away? Will we be surprised to discover it's this year? It's certainly soon, right? And it just moves us. It will be the same as moving from the floppy disk era to the solid state hard drive era in a matter of years. It really is exciting to see it coming.
We can't predict when these things are going to happen, but what we're seeing is that it's highly probable, and it's more probable than what it was, and the impact would be absolutely huge. So keeping your eye on this one could have a huge benefit for how you think and how you develop your strategies. I think quantum computing has always been stuck in this kind of just 20 years away loop. And I like to think about, if you go back in history, if we go back to the sort of, I think we talked about this during our last podcast, but the 1904, if you look at a street in New York in 1904, it's just horses and cart. And then 10 years later, in 1914, it's only cars. And there's this moment in time where the technology suddenly catches up. Combustion engines, steam engines had been around for decades, but all of a sudden they're getting smaller, they're getting more powerful, they're getting more reliable, more sophisticated. And people suddenly go, wow, we can do some incredible things with this. And I think that's what's happening with quantum. We're reaching that tipping point where this chip, which is the size of the palm of your hand, and it's 100,000 times more powerful than today's quantum machines, it could revolutionize things. So again, you're right, it may not happen, may happen in another decade or two. But if they have cracked the code, just like the Wright brothers did in 1903, December 1903, suddenly they cracked the code for human-powered flight. We've got to be watching out for these moments, because that's the thing, is our research is showing that we are at the transitionary point. We've got to find these things that will mean a new world is dawning. And I think this chip might just be it. Let's have a look.
Yep, that's a good shout for something that happened in February. That's the technology side. Anything in, I don't know, what else has happened this year? Politics, maybe, Dean?
So let's have a look at the grey elephant societal fractures. How the institutions of the world, the rules for success and failure, how they're being reshaped. And I think the J.D. Vance, his attack over free speech and migration. He launched a scaling attack on European democracies, saying the greatest threat facing the continent was not Russia or China, but it's from within. And I think the audience just stood there sort of gobsmacked at what he was saying.
Dean, I think the audience did more than that. I mean, you're talking now about the Munich Security Conference, right? This annual meeting essentially of NATO allies, but focused on Europe. And I think it was the foreign minister of Germany literally couldn't help himself, burst out during the middle of J.D. Vance's speech saying, "This is unacceptable." Now, for a German diplomat to heckle you've really had to push some boundaries somewhere. I mean, they can take a lot there in Germany. So, this, and it's caused just a few days ago, Macron fact-checked Donald Trump live at a press conference. And I think what's happened is we're seeing America has come out swinging with some of their approach to the world, and Mexico and China, my home country, South Africa, catching some side swipes as well in the process. But it seems as if the rest of the world is pushing back against that. And I suppose that's the theme of both multipolarity and societal fractures, that America might not have it all their own way.
Absolutely. So what are you seeing on your radar, Graeme? What have you picked up over the last few weeks?
Well, and let me add to the one that we've just talked about there. Obviously, if we're talking about Trump and Musk and Vance and the current American or United States, let me be more specific, USA administration, one of the projects behind it is called Project 2025. And we'll put this in the show notes. But if you go to the website project2025.observer, so that's the website name, you'll be able to have a look. And for those of you who are watching the video of us recording here, we'll put this front page of that website tracker up for you to have a look at. Project 2025 was put together by a think tank of hundreds of conservative activists over the last year or two, as a sort of guidebook for if Trump won a second term. And he's won the second term, and he's absolutely coming out all engines revving, foot to the floorboard, and this tracker is tracking the implementation of the hundreds of policy recommendations that have been made. And I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm not a Trump supporter, but I can give him this credit, that he told us what he was going to do. He's doing what he said he would do, and he's doing it at, I think, the fastest pace that's possible. So if he is right, and I am wrong, then, within a few months, we're going to see a reshaped United States of America and a reshaped world because of that. And if it works out and it delivers what he's promising, which is a better life, he's promising a better life for Americans, but that will flow over to the rest of the world as well, we hope. If it delivers that, fantastic. He's giving it gas, he's giving it everything he can. If it doesn't work, we'll also know within the course of the next few months. So we're not going to have to wait around 2, 3, 4 years. We're not going to have to wait for the historians to dig through the archives and say, did Trump's second administration really work or not? We're going to know this year. And so it almost feels like you're in the eye of the storm, right? The storm's raging all around you. We kind of know what the storm is intending to do, and that website gives you the list and tracks it item by item. So don't act surprised, I suppose, Dean, is what I'm saying. That we know what Trump's attempting to achieve, and kind of, whatever it is, we're on the ride now.
Oh, absolutely. I think certainly seeing that a number of the grey elephants are starting to stampede. Societal rules, values are shifting dramatically. Just the example at the Munich Security Conference, you wouldn't have believed just a few months ago that America would be attacking its European allies, especially around their approach to democracy and freedom of speech and all these things. So these are going to have lasting impacts, and we have to think about what the implications are for ourselves as leaders. But we need to take it further than that. We need to think about what it means to actually create the future that we want ourselves. And I think that's what Trump, Musk, Putin, and many other leaders are realizing. As all these forces come together, this is an opportune moment to create the future. And they are trying to create the future in the way that they envisage it as best for them and their communities.
For this episode, we said we were going to focus in on the aging issue specifically. And so, Dean, we got great feedback from my quiz that I surprised you with last time. So it shouldn't be really a surprise, but I think I'm going to make this a feature of our podcast, that I come in with a quiz. And genuinely, if you're listening to us, Dean has no idea what I'm about to ask him. I'm not attempting to stump him, but I think, Dean, my question to you today is this. It needs a little bit of preamble, because it's about the replacement rate of fertility. So in the world, obviously, there are different genders, and about half of the world's population are women and capable of having children, at least many of them. And so when you look at the population of a country, you need each woman or each person who has children to have 2 children in order to keep the population at the same level, to keep the numbers in the country the same. So that 2 parents produce 2 children. If you have more than 2 children, obviously your population will grow over time. If you have fewer than 2 children, on average, your population decreases. And so we call this the fertility or the replacement rate. Technically, the people who study demography look at 2.1 children on average per family as being the replacement rate. Obviously, accidents happen, and not everybody makes it to adulthood. So that kind of 0.1 is necessary. So with that as a preamble, I know you knew that, Dean, but everybody else knows it now. Here's my question. of the countries in the world that have more than 50 million population. Okay, so we're talking the big countries. There's 250 something countries in the world, but we're not considering every single one of them. But of the big countries in the world, how many, Dean? What number of countries do you think have a replacement rate of 2.2 or more? In other words, they are still growing in population. What's the number of countries?
Number of countries. Gosh, coming up with the exact number, I think it's going to be quite difficult. But I do know that Africa is the one continent that is growing, whereas most of the other continents are actually decreasing.
I'll tell you that on the list there are only 2 countries that are not in Africa. So if that's useful to help you narrow it down to a number. So it's 2 countries plus some African countries. How many in total?
Yeah. So India's still growing. China is not growing. I think 3 years of consecutive decrease in population size. I'm going to take a stab and say somewhere between, I don't know, 10 and 15.
I'm pretty impressed. The number is actually 10. And India is not on that list, Dean. India just squeaks in at 2, but not 2.1 or 2.2. So India squeaks in at 2. So they sort of stabilized at the moment. But you're right, China isn't there, of course. The countries will, again, if you're watching the video, we'll put this up on the screen. But it's Congo, Tanzania, Nigeria, Uganda, Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Egypt, and South Africa are all growing their populations. And then the only non-African country in that list is Pakistan. And then you can add Indonesia to the list as well, coming in at 2.1. Into the list. They're 11th on the list. So just a little bit, just on replacement value.
It's fascinating, isn't it, Graeme? I mean, there are 190 odd countries in the world, give or take. And if only 10 of them are growing at the moment, that's really interesting. So that means the rest of the world is getting older. We talk about these grey elephants as these moments in time that create an outcome that the world has never been through before. And that's the key thing about a sharp transformation. We've never been here before. These are new events, occurrences, outcomes for humanity and the world. So we've never lived in a world where there are more old people, say people over the age of 65, than young people, okay, under the age of let's say 20. So we're not at that point yet, okay, but we have passed a milestone where the number of people over the age of 65 is larger than the number of children, so people under the age of 5. Any idea when we passed that marker?
Now you're testing me. I think that might have been some time ago, to be honest. I would have guessed about 10 years ago, maybe.
Close-ish. 7 years ago.
Yeah. But it's just recently happened. In other words, none of us have any experience of this, right? We don't know what this feels like to live in a world where grandparents, and here's another marker to add to that, it's not that people are living older longer. It's not as if people sort of rush through their life stages like they used to half a century ago and then just spend 20 extra years being old. Have a look at what old people look like today. They don't look like old people, at least not what our memory of old people are. So it's people being younger, longer, into their 60s, 70s, and 80s with full health, full vitality, and sort of ready to live their lives. But we haven't built the world to take account of that.
This is going to impact an enormous number of people, and people from our own generation, Graeme, Generation X, the baby boomers are already in their 65s. Our generation, we are actually the generation that's moving up and are going to be part of these statistics come 2040, 2050. We are slap bang in the center. By 2050, 1 out of every 6 people will be over the age of 65. And that's up from 1 in 12 back in 2019. So we're doubling the number of people over the age of 65 within a decade, 2 decades. 2.1 billion people will be over the age of 60 by 2050.
There's obviously some immediate impacts that we have to think about. And this, for me, is always a good example of these gray elephants that becomes quite personal quite quickly. So, we have to think about, have we saved enough money for retirement? And even if you live in a country where retirement is sorted by the government and big public pension plans, those can still go bankrupt. It's not like there's free, endless money sitting in those pension plans. They can go bankrupt if too many people need them and not enough people are contributing to them. So a lot of countries are making and attempting to make big shifts. But personally, we need to be asking, do I have enough money? And then wouldn't want to necessarily air the family laundry here, but a lot of us, Dean, are in our generation, people now in their 40s and 50s, we're finding out our parents are living longer than they thought they would, longer than we thought they would. They need our help. Certainly my parents do. And I don't think that's any shame on them. It's just they didn't plan for this. And so our generation is needing to support elderly parents maybe longer than we thought we would, and thinking about extending our careers longer than we thought we would. And there's probably even personal implications about relationships. I mean, did you sign up for a 90-year marriage when you got married in your late 20s, early 30s? Probably not. So many personal implications. I mean, how does it hit you, Dean?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It hits us on a personal level, and it certainly hits our children. And Graeme, you've got, I think, 3 daughters who were born in the 1990s. And the predictions are that if you're born during the 1990s, all things working out well and fine, you should live well into your 120s. So absolutely, you get married in your early 20s, you're going to be married for 90 to 100 years, which, just is mind-blowing. Our values, our norms are going to have to shift around retirement and even marriage. I often think, is society sort of sleepwalking into a demographic time bomb? The economic impact is just huge. We're going to have fewer working age people. It's going to mean slower economic growth, higher pensions, higher health costs. The cost of retiring or the cost of healthcare for an American retiree is they need close on $500,000 just for their healthcare. Workforce is going to shrink dramatically in Europe. Without immigration, and this is the interesting thing, because immigration is such a hot topic, but without immigration, the population in Europe could shrink by a third between 2050 and onwards. This is a big thing, and it's not just Europe, it's not just America, it's China as well. By 2050, 30% of China's population will be over the age of 65.
So, Dean, I think that what you're saying there also leads us to what we call as futurists second and third order effects. So the first order effect is the direct immediate impact. But then you begin to look at the ripples and how do those ripples flow out. So this is why migration is such an issue, because Europe has identified that the only way to plug that gap in the workforce is to have incoming migration. But then J.D. Vance talks about that and says, no, but that's a problem. And I think America, well, I've already said it. We will discover who's right and who's wrong by the end of this year for sure, in terms of whether the migrants that the current U.S. administration wants to remove from the American economy, whether that has a positive or negative effect on the economy. I think we need migrants. I think there's going to be a big migratory move over the rest of the century in order to balance out some of these aging population dynamics. But, ideologically and politically, that might cause real stress in the system.
Absolutely. And I think there is going to be a period of resistance, and then there's going to be a period of realization. Otherwise, we'll get to a point where for every 2 workers, there's a retiree who they're having to support. And that's just not sustainable. People's lifestyles will take a real drop. And the only way to ensure economic growth in that will be to actively encourage migration. So I think there will be a realization and an adjustment, but it's probably going to be a very painful adjustment and is going to take time. So, organizations and leaders can think quite proactively around what they need to do, how they can acquire talented migrants, because I think that's where the first wave of migrants will come from, is how can we bring talent into our countries, into our organizations. People will probably be more accepting of that, but also to lobby the importance of migrants within countries. I think it's going to be an important. It's going to be amazing to see how this plays out. Just shutting your borders is not going to help in the long term. It may help in the short term, but it's certainly not going to help in the long term.
Good news for Achilles, who are our sponsor and partner on this here, because they focus on supply chain and logistics globally. And I think you and I both feel that a lot of the grey elephants that we are looking at, of course, the immediate problem is people shutting their borders and becoming a little bit nationalistic. But I think, Dean, both you and I look at the second order effects and realize that once people have attempted to do what feels like the obvious response, which is to be a little bit more protectionistic, we believe that the rest of these mega forces are going to push people to still continue to think and act globally. So yeah, we're not predicting a downscale of trade or international thinking anytime soon, for sure.
The other thing, maybe as a business wanting to be progressive in how you confront these forces, is to say, well, if immigration is going to be a hot potato in our country, then we need to go where markets are growing, and Africa is growing at a huge rate, and if investments are placed into Africa, leadership skills, manufacturing skills, Africa has the potential to become one of the next sort of powerhouse regions. And actually, if you want to stop migrants, because the alternative is that Africa continues to be poverty-stricken, global warming makes parts of Africa uninhabitable, and people are forced then to flock to Europe, where there is money and jobs, or perceived money and jobs. And that just compounds the effect. So as a leader wanting to create a more positive outcome and be proactive in that, one of the opportunities would be to invest in Africa. As you were saying earlier, Graeme, there are a number of countries in Africa that are still growing at quite rapid rates. This century could be Africa's century. We've seen China and India really taking up the economic reins. There's potential for Africa to follow.
That's, of course, the flip side of the coin. If some people are nervous of the reduction of population because of its economic impact on the markets that they're in, well, the flip side of that coin is if you're going to a country that is increasing its population, you're then in an environment where you've got a potential demographic dividend, at least. But Dean, talking about opportunities, that's a key part of what Elephants in the Boardroom is all about. It's not just attempting to identify these trends, before they stampede, if we keep to the analogy, but it's also looking for the opportunities that they bring. And if we are going to enter an era that none of us have ever experienced before, with this aging population that is still got their vitality, they've still got an ability to contribute, we're going to have to reconfigure society a little bit. I know both of us have kept our eyes on some interesting news stories. My favorite was an experiment. Brazil and the UK and a few other countries were noted, where they were putting old age homes, or at least old age people, into child daycare centers, combining the two together. It was sort of, if you like, Uber for grandparents, or sort of the gig economy, where grandparents and grandchildren, not necessarily biologically connected, but in a community, in a town, in a city, could interact with each other. And I mean, by all accounts, just absolutely stunning in terms of the outputs. And we'll put a link in the show notes to a documentary if you're interested in that. But I know, Dean, something caught your eye. We mentioned the baby boomers a few minutes ago. The baby boomers are still being a bit naughty. I mean, they're the drug, sex, and rock and roll generation from the 1960s. But I laughed and laughed when you sent me a news report. You found it. You go ahead and tell us, what are the baby boomers up to in their 70s and 80s?
Let's step back a bit before I talk about that article, because I think the key thing here is the concept of retirement is flawed. If retirement was kind of invented for a different era, Otto von Bismarck back in 1889 came up with the idea of a pension, and life expectancy then was around 60, maybe 70 if you were doing really well. Today, people are living well into their 80s, 90s, and as you said, they're young going into those age groups. And they're taking many of those, I suppose, when you retire, the great dream for the boomers and perhaps even for some of Gen Xers is, you want to retire early. If you could retire when you're in your 50s, you've kind of hit the jackpot. Definitely early 60s. But if you're now living, if the new normal is that there's a chance that you're going to live into 100, that means you've got 40 years. Okay, so what are you going to do for those 40 years? You can go play golf, you can sit on a beach for a while, but those things are going to become boring. So the article that you're referring to it's in The Economist, and it's stating that the baby boomers in retirement are actually becoming one of the naughtiest age groups around. The amount of drugs, sort of STIs, and more people in over 60s are dying from drug overdoses than under 20-year-olds. That's they're living a frivolous lifestyle. They're living it up, much I think as baby boomers have done throughout the ages. But they are reinventing what retirement means, and that's as much as this is grabbing the headlines. Retirement has to be reinvented, and I think that's a wonderful opportunity. I think there are amazing products out there that can be that companies can direct their innovative, creative minds to, and come up with things that in which retirement is reinvented.
So, Dean, on that note, I actually went on to social media before we started recording this episode, and I asked people what would their questions be on this issue of aging, and I've got one or two for you. So, Linda Smith, a lovely friend and associate of Tomorrow Today over many years, who works with people heading into retirement to do exactly what you've just been talking about. Linda asks this, Dean, what new and innovative ways can boards create to manage aging employees being involved and purposeful for longer? And she particularly asked if the insurance and health industries would need to get involved. But have you seen examples of companies that are taking aging seriously with their employees and doing something interesting?
Increasingly, we are seeing examples of a number of companies that are taking intergenerational workplace seriously, looking at reverse mentoring, young digital natives teaching older workers sharing their knowledge. So you create these mutual benefits. But the story that stands out for me is BMW. They looked at ways in which they can create flexible working, different design of different tools to help aged workers still be productive within their workshops. And I think at one plant in Germany, they spent about $50,000, and the return on investment has been absolutely huge. With different generations working more productively together, older workers feeling actually rewarded and needed and for their own contribution and valued for their contribution. So BMW I think is doing some really interesting things. I think they call it their tomorrow for today or today for tomorrow plan, something like that. So
I think that's right. Today for tomorrow plan. Yeah.
Yeah, we should charge them some royalty rights.
Yeah,
there, Graeme.
The Tomorrow Today plan, maybe. I have an example for that. I did a workshop with one. I won't name them, but it's one of the big four accounting auditing firms. And they had asked me to come and talk about the younger generation and help them deal with the young graduates who join every year into those firms. And I tricked them a little bit because I was dealing with their senior leaders. And I got there and I started by asking them to think about whether they were going to retire soon and if they were being forced to retire, what actually would they like to happen with their retirement years? And we got a list of the type of work environment that they would really enjoy. So a little bit of flexible working, a little bit of, flexible hours, maybe working only a 4-day working week, being able to have technology to work from home, needing to have their skills updated so that they could feel that they were on top of some of the things like a virtual working environment or AI assistance or so on. So we got this lovely little list and it went exactly the way I expected it to. I was sort of making this bullet list on my slide. And then I had this lovely transition on my slide over to a list of saying to them, do you know what today's average 26-year-old is looking for? It's literally the same list, Dean. And they then look at a 26-year-old and say, oh, you lazy, arrogant, what young generation, you entitled. And we say, no, but hang on. Maybe between us, and this is BMW's, today for tomorrow, maybe between us, we actually all want similar things for the workplace. Now, the baby boomers would say you should spend 20 years in pain so that you can earn that when you retire. Today's young people say, no, just give it to us right now. So there's a conversation to be had. But I don't think we're very far apart in thinking about maybe what a different world looks like. And I suppose that's as we head towards wrapping up this episode. Maybe let me just give you the floor to finish us off here, Dean. If we've got an aging world that's going to result in something we've never experienced before, and we need to bring an opportunity mindset to it, what does a business leader listening to us now need to be doing as they think about the elephant in the boardroom?
It's a great question, Graeme. And I spoke right at the start. I spoke about this being a kairos moment, a sharp transformational point in history. And when we look at aging and the future of aging, and this is a transitionary period where leaders can shape the future instead of reacting too late. The retirement model is outdated. We need to embrace a future where people continue to work flexibly, purposefully, and sustainably. We need to ask ourselves the question, do we see aging as a crisis or an opportunity? And I think it's the leaders who look internally within their business and externally within their markets, and they say, this is a huge opportunity, and it's a wonderful opportunity to really improve and to create shared value and make the world a better place. I'm a strong believer in businesses being an incredible platform for creating more value and increasingly making in the world a better place. And aging is a wonderful place where we can start with our co-workers and our customers. So accept retirement, aging, it's an outdated model. And what do you see as the opportunities? And go out there and create them.
Go out there and create them indeed. Thanks, Dean. That's obviously what we do at Tomorrow Today Consulting. And if we can be of any assistance in helping you and your team to think through these things and work out what it means for you, obviously just be in touch. Talking about being in touch, wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast platform or videos platform, please like and subscribe. Let us know what you think and have a look at the show notes for all of the resources that we've mentioned in this episode. Thank you for listening to another episode of Elephants in the Boardroom. Thank you again to Achilles, our sponsor. Don't forget that if you are a business that wants to improve your supply chain, your logistics, your ESG strategy in that regard, it's really worth speaking to Achilles, and just pop over to achilles.com for more information. We'll see you next month, where we look again at these future trends, and we'll dive into that issue of strategy and how strategy thinking and creation and implementation is changing. From Dean and myself, thanks for listening to Elephants in the Boardroom. We'll see you again next month.